Good afternoon. Welcome back to Knighthawks Media Availability. Chamberlain Botter here with you as we get into the Knighthawks final weekend of the season, a double header home and home stand against the Georgia Swarm, first in Duluth, Georgia on Saturday at 4 p.m., and then heading back to the Blue Cross Arena on Sunday for a 3 p.m. face-off on what will be the Knighthawks Native American Heritage game. Today with us, we've got interim head coach Randy Mearns and defenseman Jake Piseno ready to go for this bit of a long weekend. Mearnsy, for you, you know, a lot of firsts this season, right? But this will be your first head-to-head, back-to-back home and home game. I mean, what are the thoughts going into a weekend like that where you're going to leave the turf and step back onto the turf less than 24 hours apart from each other?
Yeah, it'll absolutely be an experience. I actually picked a couple of our guys' brains in terms of hey, like the back to back, and obviously Craig Rosinski's done a great job, and Dan, like in terms of where we got to be, when we got to be there, and then when do we got to kind of get out, like all that administrative travel stuff. It gets obviously all taken care of. For us, we just, we want to try to continue to get better, we have two final games to do that. Yeah, I guess kind of from a back to back standpoint, you got to be prepared. Maybe there's an injury, those kind of types of things. So it'll be a first time experience, but we got a great crew in terms of support with Kyle and Matt, and obviously with Bobby Keese and Dan and Craig, and we'll work it all the way through. But quite honestly, it's just really being ready for Saturday. I mean, it's another opportunity to play. It's another opportunity to get better. In all facets of the game, and that's just what we're going to concentrate on.
100%. For you, with the Native American Heritage game being Sunday, obviously you're not focused on Sunday yet, but the last 2 weeks leading up, we as a team have done a lot to kind of prepare for that, whether it's Ganondigan last week, the CCC event. Just how have you seen the team kind of getting ready for this Native American Heritage game, and how exciting has it been with the nation being as involved as they are?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely incredibly exciting. I mean, it was very very appreciated for the nation to bring us and to kind of continue to understand like the history and what like lacrosse actually means. Obviously we play it at this level, but there's a deeper cultural I guess reality to it, and why we play this, the creators game, and to get educated, to understand the history, for me only leads to, inspiration, of having the opportunity, to play, to coach, to really, experience this with an incredible group of guys. And I mean, it's going to be a big game, obviously on Sunday, doing the CCC event, and at Ganangadan, with Ainsley Jimerson. I thought he did an incredible job of explaining, and again, it's really really educational, and I don't feel like there's a drastic amount of people that really kind of understand where the game came from, and when you can like listen to it and understand it, and experience it, what an incredible what an incredible opportunity.
100%. Jake, for you in this weekend as you get ready, there's all of the storylines. We could even talk about you and Michael Grace, two guys that are long stick midfielders in the field game that come into the transition game and light it up in the box. But first, this Georgia matchup. Just how do you look at the opportunity to end your season playing the same team 2 days or a day apart from each other and being able to have a lot of controllables that you can build off of?
Yeah, I think it's just taking it one game at a time. Like Coach said, like we're just worried about Saturday right now, and then Sunday will come. But yeah, I guess playing the same opponent back to back in 2 days, it's pretty easy to play them on Saturday and then kind of like learn what they do right and what they do wrong and what we can adjust to, and then we'll be ready on Sunday. But yeah, it's a cool opportunity to go back to back. I think a lot of guys' bodies feel it and everything like that, and we definitely have to recover and be able to get back out there. Like you said, less than 24 hours. So
Not the first time that you guys have done it this season, though, which I don't know how many teams can say when they get to a back-to-back in the last week of the season that they've already done it earlier in the year. Can you just talk a little bit about what that experience maybe gave you to prepare for this? And also, where does that aspect of it's just running on fumes and that's enough kind of come from, maybe?
Yeah, I think you quickly realize how much gas you have in the tank, right? I think, once you get to the arena on that second day, you realize that, you don't really have time to sulk about being sore and all that stuff, and you don't even think about it, right? Like you just get right back on the floor and you get going again and you worry about, making the next play and doing all that. So I think that's really the experience part of it is that we've already done it. We've already realized that, no matter how hard the game is Saturday, when you get back on the floor and get back in the locker room the next day, you don't have time to think about it. You're not sore. You just got to go out and play again. So I think it's pretty cool that we were able to already have this experience. So we're kind of ready for it this weekend.
Definitely. Spencer, take it away.
Hey coach, how are you doing today?
Hey, Spencer. Good, man. You?
I'm doing good. Have you seen the jerseys that are being worn on Sunday?
I did. I did. Had an opportunity to get a quick little preview when we were in Buffalo. Excited to wear those. Kind of back to that. I don't know if it's the green and teal, but such an incredible event, and I think the jerseys are absolutely awesome. So looking forward to that for Sunday.
There's a lot of connections between the Seneca Nation and St. Bonaventure, where you were for many years. And now you're coaching a team that's owned by the nation. Has there been anything that really stood out to you as far as ownership wise, like how involved they are with this team?
Obviously I've been kind of like 5 to 6 weeks in. I can say this, like, they want the best for us. They're willing to put in all the necessary resources to allow us to be successful. It's been absolutely an incredible opportunity. And it's our job, to kind of put the product on the floor that can be successful and vie for championships. And for me personally, having the opportunity to be around the Seneca Nation and the ACC and the CCC and there's a number of friends that are Seneca and to proudly kind of wear the helm and the jersey for them is an incredible experience. And we're gonna just try to continue to get better and try to make them proud of our performance this upcoming weekend. And we want to continue to put our best foot forward. And we know that they're invested, and we know that we're invested. And we just got to put together the game plan and to do it the right way, and make sure that they're proud of how we handle ourselves, what we do, how committed that we are. And if we can play a 60-minute game in all facets, that's the intention, is to do them proud for sure.
Definitely. This weekend, well, we're going to stay on the St. Bonaventure topic. This weekend, a doubleheader against a guy you're very familiar with in Brett Dobb.
Defense in front of them. Obviously a stellar coaching staff. But at the end of the day, it's also kind of a little bit of excitement. I've gotten the opportunity, to recruit and coach Brett and to watch him, not only from a field standpoint transition, over this, since 2022, him develop as a lacrosse goalie in the National Lacrosse League. And again, he's having an incredible year. He's an incredible goalie. Save percentage is excellent. He's great at outletting the ball in terms of transition. So we got to be prepared for that. We got to try to continue to evolve and get great opportunities, and we got to solve them. They're defensive wise and goaltending wise, they're very stingy in terms of how many goals they give up. Even at home, I was doing some of the analysis, Spencer, and it was kind of like 7, 9, 9, 5, 7, and so there was one that was I think a 16 against Halifax, but they had pulled Brett, for the fourth quarter, and then Halifax kind of made that run. So, but he's one player on a team. He's a cog of the wheel for sure, and he's a very good cog. But it's a team game. We got to create our own transition. We got to defend fiercely and strongly, and we got to create shots and great opportunities. And and at the end of the day, he's beatable. And so we got to try to continue to create that. And we're looking for a team win. It's not just one person. It takes a team, and we got to make sure we're bringing our A game.
And now going into the final weekend of the season, what is one word you would use to describe this 2026 Rochester Knighthawks team?
Dedicated. I mean, dedicated. Maybe the wins haven't come, but guys are dedicated. It's a special group. They care for one another. That's always readily apparent. They're hardworking. Well, I guess I'm using more than one word. But it's been an absolute incredible opportunity and pleasure to be involved and to work with these guys and to know what they're all about. And as much as that, we maybe haven't gotten the number of wins that we want, it's not for a lack of dedication or hard work or effort. Sometimes things just don't fall your way. So like I say, we get an opportunity to practice this week. We're going to get better, and we're going to focus in on Georgia for Saturday.
Thank you, Coach. Jake, earlier this year, we talked about the number 88 and how it wasn't your first choice, but you said you grew up going to Nighthawks games and watching Cody Jamieson. Now, this weekend, you're going to get to wear that teal and purple with the number 88 on the back. How surreal is it going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be insane. I already had the conversation with my dad earlier this week, and we just talked about it, how he showed me a couple pictures off of his old phone of me at that arena wearing it was like a flat brim purple and teal Nighthawks hat and everything like that. So yeah, it's going to be surreal. I think that any chance I get to put on a jersey, whether it's indoor, outdoor, or anything like that, it's a great opportunity for me, and I just love this game so much. And I think all the people who came before me and allowed me to follow in their footsteps. So it's going to be awesome.
And then once Sunday hits, it will be 4 straight road games before heading back home. How excited are you to be back home for that final home game?
Yeah, it's definitely tough to go away. It's definitely tough to play on the road, but I think we did say it in the locker room in Buffalo that we've kind of let our fans down a little bit this season, and whether it was at home or even away, just our record in general. But we want to get that last one for them and for all the fans and for everybody in the media and everything like that. We definitely enjoy being at home, and I think that everyone brings the energy when we're at Blue Cross Arena. So getting that last one on Sunday is huge for us.
So thank you.
Thanks, Spence. Brendan?
Thanks, Chamberlain. Coach, first thing for you, I mean, you're 5 games into your Nighthawks journey, and you kind of answered this a little bit from Spencer's question, but outside of the dedication part of this team, what have you learned about this Nighthawks team that you didn't know before you became the head coach?
That's a great question. It's I was familiar with a number of the players, to just being familiar with a variety of other things, whether through field lacrosse or national teams, but just their openness of welcoming me in, kind of to the fold. It was pretty seamless, and I was very, very grateful for that. Again, it's just how hard we work. Our leadership is absolutely phenomenal. For me was also kind of assessing, where's everybody kind of fit in terms of the piece of the puzzle for us to be successful, and to have the opportunity to coach and to kind of be involved and develop game plans, and and understand like the capabilities of our players, and to try to put that together in a winning formula. Obviously we had one opportunity that worked obviously in Oshawa. Halifax, they ended up getting 4, face-off goals, although they were just kind of off of scrums. And, that was kind of the difference in the game. And, you play Buffalo and, obviously they're a very, very solid squad. And, we played gritty. We played hard, Matt Vince made saves, and I felt, Rylan Hartley played very, very well for us. And, we just kind of ended up on the wrong side, so we get this opportunity again to finish the season off strong. We get to play for each other. We get to play for the fans. We get to, play for some pride. We get to play for some respect. We get to play for the nation, and you can't take that lightly. Every time we get the opportunity to, don a journey or be at this level, you have to do it with class, and you have to do it with a sense of grace, I think, because you never ever know when that can go away. So I just try to bring my best effort, as I know everybody does. And, and hopefully this weekend, we're able to continue to get better in all facets and, put the pieces of the puzzle together and come out with some victories.
And taking a look at some of the players, Ryan Lanchbury right now is tied in assist in the league with 75 with Dane Smith. Dane's only got 1 game left. Lanch has got 2 games left. So it's very likely that Ryan Lanchbury could end the season as the number 1 assist leader in the National Lacrosse League. What have you seen from Ryan's game, maybe before you coached him to now that you coached him, that maybe the rest of the league maybe still doesn't know because he still doesn't get talked about a lot?
Yeah, he doesn't really get talked about a lot. Obviously, when you have Connor Fields on your roster, a lot of the light will go that way. Obviously, we got Ryan Smith and McConvey, and I got to tell you, I had the opportunity to coach against Ryan more from a field standpoint when he was at Richmond, and he was a finisher. He was a good feeder. A very, very good playmaker and a kind of a quarterback. And now having the opportunity to work with him and, through Kyle Calais to really kind of see how really good he is. It's pretty awesome. Now I also say this, that even for Lancher, I don't feel like, hey, I'm going into the game to, try to, see how many assists that I can get, although he's very, very good at it. I feel like, for him, it's, hey, play my role. He's an initiator. He can put the ball on the line. He can feed in the tight spaces, and he can score, and if he just, and I feel like he just plays, to his strengths, and, the points will come. But I don't really kind of feel like it's a focus for him. I feel like trying to win and getting on, the successful side is more important, I think, with all our guys, and so be it if he gets, the assists that he needs to lead the league and or not. I really don't believe that's really a focus. It's really about, hey, let's play our role, and let's have success, and if it happens, it happens, and but I feel more concentrating on the team success really than an individual success.
And speaking of that, you came in at the same time Blaze Reardon did. What has Blaze been able to bring to the team in the 5 games that he's been in Rochester?
Yeah, he's a voice. He's a kind of a voice in the locker room. Had a lot of respect when he's kind of coming in. Obviously, a little bit of a veteran, kind of leadership. Really kind of really supported and kind of upgraded our left hand side to a certain extent. He's going to go in. He's going to create more space for T-Mac and for Connor. But also he can score. He can score, and for guys like that'll go and do all the gritty and the dirty work, in front of the net to create opportunities for his teammates. I feel like that was a big mainstay of his game, and I thought he's performed it extremely well over these last 5 games, and as he came in, you kind of wonder how quickly is the chemistry going to build, in terms of, the conversation or the communication or just, maybe individual set plays. And, Blaze is a pro. He's been through this, and it kind of felt like it was, somewhat kind of seamless, and he fit in, very, very well, very, very quickly, and just obviously an incredible player. And I'm glad that he's in that he's in K-Hawkville.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mearns. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Brendan.
Brennan, anything for Jake there? Are you good?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Drew, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. I'll try and be as brief as I can be. I'm going to talk a little bit through the lens of the Georgia broadcast. So I apologize if these are questions that you've probably answered before, but this is the first time we're seeing you guys this year. Last year, Rochester came into Georgia, and the Knighthawks showed a ton of energy and really beat up on kind of a flat Georgia. And it felt like that game started a upward trajectory for Rochester and a downward trajectory for Georgia. And so coming into this season, I think the expectations were high for Rochester, and I'm guessing midpoint with maybe not meeting expectations, right? Rochester lets go of Hazen. Randy, you get hired. And then what was your goal at that point in the season, knowing that, the expectations were high for this Rochester group and had not necessarily been achieved, or whatever might have been said between you and the ownership? But what were your goals, and what was the kind of plan moving forward from when you were hired?
Yeah, I feel getting hired was, I feel, basically, hey, maybe, as there was a little bit of this downward trend of just basically having like a different voice, Drew, like, I'm a pretty high energy kind of guy. And for me, that first week and a half, like I said to the guys in our first practice, was like, okay, like this is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for me. One is to really get to know some of the players that, sure, calling and broadcasting, you can you can kind of see from up top and kind of have an idea, but to really kind of start to build some relationships and, to kind of assess and watch and work with, the coaching staff, and the players, that was kind of like priority, number one. We went to Vegas, and, I was quickly, acquainted with, the fact that, and not really an X's and O's thing, but when you're up top broadcasting and doing those things, just on how fast the game is, like just how fast the changes are, how skilled and how big and how athletic all these players are that are playing in the NLL these days, was a little bit eye-opening to a certain extent. And then, then you kind of filter in with it. Now, we got down a little bit when we were in Vegas. Obviously, they took that victory. Then we were at home, so it was awesome to be at home, and I felt like I had a better beat and better working relationship with Kyle and Matt, and we were in that flux of bringing on Bobby Keast. And I was we got down. I think it was 7-1, 8-1, and just the resolve of our guys to not like, mail it in and and kind of feel down, like, no, like we can do this. And we got on a really, really good run, and it actually ended up, taking that 13-12 lead, and it felt really good. And you could feel the energy on the bench. And then we, took a one or two penalties that were kind of like, and, obviously Vegas ended up, scoring, 3 or 4 late, and we ended up losing. Right. So, and then we continued to build. So, by the time Oshawa came, it was like, okay, I kind of feel like I know all the players, and how they can kind of be pieces of the puzzle. I thought we had a great game plan. Obviously had a great victory, which felt good for everybody, in Oshawa. Went to Halifax, and, we had a great game plan, and Halifax is maybe a tough place to play. And like I said, off of the faceoff, and it wasn't an issue with Nathan Cap, like allowing Jake Withers to, pinch and pop and go forward, because obviously Jake's one of the best faceoff guys in the loop. But and I would hold it to myself, like, I didn't direct, Nathan in some of the situations that he kind of got caught in, where like he just like left the play as opposed to going back and playing defense. And then they scored 4 goals off the faceoff. And you well know, Drew, like they're so deflating, right? Like,
yeah,
you work so hard, right? And so like learning experience for me, fool me once, my fault, fool me twice, like, okay, on you kind of thing, right? So, and then, going into a hot Buffalo game, I thought we played to our game plan. I thought we played with a bunch of grit. I thought Jeremy Thompson did great at the faceoffs against Farrell. We just continued to kind of, just to work hard. And, unfortunately, we came up against a very, very, hot Buffalo Bandit roster that, kind of seems to have fit and figured out their mix. And so, the depressing part about it is like, that not winning eliminated us from the playoffs, and so, the focus really has been, okay, well, how do we get better? And for our guys to continue to realize, like, as much as it's been a down year, like we have this opportunity once again to play for each other, to play for our team, to play for respect, play with some pride, play for our fans, and to try to, end the season off, in the right way, and guys, on Tuesday when we practiced, guys were spirited, guys were committed, guys were focused. That was, I wouldn't expect anything less than the guys that we have in the locker room. So, we get this opportunity, and as the season will come to an end, like I said to the guys, like, nobody can tell the future, but it probably won't be the same locker room as everybody continues to draft. And so you got to enjoy it, and you just got to continue to do it for the next guy beside you. If we can execute and be efficient, we got a great opportunity of ending the season off in the right way.
With that in mind, what are some things that you're hoping to see from the group to end the season? Obviously, again, like you said, stinks to be eliminated from the playoffs, but you got 2 games to go. From a coaching standpoint, what are you hoping to maybe see from this group moving into next year that'll maybe help set the tone for next year?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is like, hey, like how everybody's going to play this weekend, right? Like, it kind of reminds me a little bit, of kind of like Philadelphia in the situation that they kind of went through where, okay, got eliminated. And then there was the trade deadline. And, I kind of came in after that, but, and again, not knowing what Coach Rubel and, Patty McCready and Paulie Day were saying, but hey, like, here's an opportunity, how you play can determine, maybe some of your future going into next year. And they had obviously a huge win, against Vegas. I think the made 60 saves, and, that was awesome. And that kept us actually in the playoff hunt. And then we were hopeful for obviously Georgia to beat San Diego at home, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And so we put ourselves in that spot where we were relying, obviously on some other teams to do some other things, and it actually was kind of working, like 3 for 3. We were like, okay, that's on the side. We're still like alive. And then obviously it was kind of surreal when San Diego won, and then you kind of come to the realization, okay, well, we do actually have 2 games left. We got 1 more practice left. And okay, well, then what's the focus? And having some great conversations with our coaching staff and Dan and our leadership group, and hey, like we have 2 games left, and for us, like, we have to continue just to get better at all facets. I feel like we grind on loose balls. I feel like we can create potentially a little bit more transition than we have had. We want to continue to stay dedicated to getting up and off the floor. We got to stay out of the box, because Georgia's got a pretty dominant, power play, and Brett Dobson, from making a save to putting the ball in a stick to outletting it to McIntosh or Hickey or Brian Cole, and out the door up the floor they go. like we gotta match that. We gotta cover that. And so now it's just fundamentally continuing to just get better in all facets. I mean, coming into it, it's a game of like, and it's all cliches, but everybody knows, man, it's a game of a millimeter. It's a game of like inches. It's a game of an eighth of a second of whether or not you make a save, whether or not you're in the right spot. Like, and you can't take any time off in a 60-minute game. Like, you have to, anytime that you're on the floor, like it has to be, it just has to be at 100%. That's good. What our expectation is going to be, here in Georgia and then back in Roch.
Gotcha. And then last question for you. One of the things that we talk a lot about on broadcast is, I talk a lot about how the game's changed over the years. You obviously played in the league. What's different for you as a player and now coming in this year as a coach? What do you see that's kind of evolved or changed, or what do you see that's the same?
Well, I think it's like evolved from back in the day when I kind of hung up the stick back in 2002, maybe 24 years, quarter of a century. Back in the day, there was maybe one or two specialty guys that were backdoor guys, or front door guys, but there were three guys that were two-way guys, and so that's a little bit different on how specialized it is now. You can see still the debate of whether or not having a face-off guy makes any sense of whether or not you win the game. I know Eddie Como, 15, 20 years ago with Hunts. Does it really matter and or not? Or do you just play defense first and that becomes your face-off?
That discussion every broadcast. Yeah.
Right. Hold it down. Right. And, but then if you have a dominant face-off guy and if you're down by 2 and there's 2 minutes left, well, maybe you need that guy, because you got to get the ball. Obviously the specialization of the front door and the back door and the change is different. But I also will say, God, like just like the size and the athleticism and like the stick work is just off the charts. Like it's just off the charts on how good these guys are. And again, from a broadcasting standpoint, like you can call it and go, Josh Byrne did this or Connor Fields did that, and it's great, blah, blah, blah. But like to actually be floor level and to coach it, like you kind of step back in some awe a little bit, like, oh my God, like this is so fast. These guys are so good. And each team is different, right? Heavy on D, maybe more transition, maybe more, offensive kind of maybe minded. And, let's be the first to 15 and we'll win. So there's a lot of differences. I think that those are probably, those ones. And then I kind of, reminisce back and kind of go, God, like, if John Tavares or Gary Gade or Paulie Gade or, Junior back in the day just played every offensive shift like the guys do now, I'm not so sure Tavares wouldn't have like another 1,000 points.
Right.
But that's just the way of the game, right? It's just where it's evolved and it's so hard to get into the league. There's guys that are in university, there'll be the draft and just to realize like, oh my God, like it's just so hard to get in the league from a couple of standpoints. If you're an older cat offensively and defensively, the younger bucks are coming, right? They're coming out of college and they want your job. Well, the game has continued to evolve, right? In terms of the new CBA and where can it go and sponsorship and all that stuff, where the older stalwarts are kind of going, yeah, I'm so sure I want to give up that range yet, right? So they all have personal trainers and nutritionists and, going to cryo and, doing all that great fun stuff because they still want to stick around for another 3 or 4 years, and so that's only going to continue, my personal opinion, of continue to improve like the level of play. And it's already at this amazing level. I was doing the math and, You look at the front door, you go, let's just say 14 teams and let's just say 6, like it's 84 jobs. Like, and if you're a young guy coming out of junior A because you renounced your eligibility or you're coming out of the NCAA, like you got to be somebody special to take one of those jobs. Like it's like really, really hard to do. It's exclusive, and then you see these guys now that are trying to get into the loop, maybe a little bit different because they all want to get into the loop, Drew. And so then they're going to go play in the ALL, and then they're going to play Senior B, and then they're going to try to get to the MSL. They're going to work for 2 or 3 more years, and then maybe get a sniff when they're 26, 27. Like and that's amazing. And I feel like that's just going to continue, the growth. And then now to kind of see like the next generation in another 3, 4, 5, 6 years of that group kind of coming in and hoping to make the NLL and get to the loop. Like, where's it going to be at that time? And so I still feel like lacrosse in its kind of entirety globally is still kind of at its infancy.
Right.
But there's still so many things that can happen to help this great game grow.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you very much. Best of luck this weekend. Really looking forward to seeing you guys on Saturday. Jake, just a couple quick questions for you. One of the things that we also highlight on broadcast is the role that obviously the National Lacrosse League is predominantly Canadian, but some of the ways that the non-Canadians get into the game and how they enjoy it and their success. So just curious when you started Box and how you've enjoyed the year and a bit that or I guess 2 years now that you've been a part of the NLL in Rochester.
Yeah, I mean, I played my first box lacrosse game a week after I got back from the 2023 World Championships.
Okay.
So it's pretty crazy. I played 8 games of box lacrosse before Rochester drafted me, and yeah, it's been a learning curve for sure. I think for me, obviously the outdoor game gave me my name, and I was lucky enough to have, a lot of NLL coaches reach out and say like, "Are you going to play?" I never really knew if I was going to. If I didn't get, drafted, I don't think I would have, tried to get into the league or anything like that. So I was really thankful. It was an opportunity that fell into my lap, and it was pretty exciting. And obviously last year, I went into the NLL season after my first outdoor professional season, so I already felt what it felt like to be a professional. So I came in and I was ready to work and ready to learn. And being a rookie in either league doesn't matter how good you are. There's learning curves and everything like that. So yeah, last year was a big just, listen to the vets, listen to the coaches, what you do wrong, you learn from. And I was able to, really, really kind of dial in on the IQ part of the game. And, my physical part is always going to be there. So I really focused on the IQ and being able to be a good teammate and a good player on the field when I'm on there. And, this year has been a lot more comfortable for me, I would say.
Awesome. What do you think has been something that you've really enjoyed about the indoor game as opposed to the outdoor game, or what do you like about the NLL that's maybe a little bit different than the outdoor game, or similar in a sense? But what do you think you bring to the table, and what for indoor lacrosse, and how has it and what keeps you playing indoor?
Yeah, I think my style of play is seen in both leagues. It's very similar where, you worry about the defensive end first, but you're an offensive minded defender. And, when I have my pull outside, I'm able to, pull up from pretty deep and be able to can some shots and everything like that. And in the indoor, it's a little bit different. You got to be a little bit more precise on where you're shooting and everything like that. But it's the same thing where, you take your opportunities and, you want to be able to push transition and be that defender who can help, maybe get a spark and, one of those juice goals that you're looking for. But one aspect that I always tell people that I love about the NLL compared to outdoor is just just the team camaraderie. Obviously the PLL is still a new league. It's going to get there eventually, where you have home and away schedules and you have the locker rooms and all that stuff. But playing in front of Blue Cross Arena, like there's nothing better than having home fans and people who really come to every single home game and they're ride or die with you. Like I watch NFL, I watch all these other sports, and I'm a ride or die Raiders fan, and I can only imagine, what those guys feel like, when their fans are fired up and they're in their home crowd, and that's what you feel like when you're playing at Rochester. So that's one aspect that I like, and I know the PLL is going to get there at some point, but it's just the going in the locker room and stuff that you did in college, where you were in the locker room with your boys, every the night before games and the day of games, and that's something that you never want to take for granted. So
Definitely. I feel you on that. I don't know if it was the first win, but I used to play for the Toronto Rock, and we had a huge win in Rochester because it was one of the hardest places to play, bar none. And to go in there, get a win, just a regular season win, and we were a good team, but it was just like, holy shit, like what an
yeah,
accomplishment, like to do it in front of these fans in this arena. And Cody Jamieson would have been on the team then, so it would have been a year or two before they won the three championships. And yeah, you feel like you really kind of went to war. So I kind of
yeah,
get you on that.
100%.
Um, yeah, I'm interested too because ironically enough, this kind of happened to me. So you couldn't have 88 originally. Who had that number?
So when I was in college at Albany, I went in my freshman year, and they tell you to pick numbers, and I was always number 21 in high school.
Okay.
Um, and then I went in there, and you pick your three numbers, and I got my number, it was number 20. And all of a sudden it was like 3 weeks into our fall freshman year, and the coaches come up to me, they're like, hey, like, we actually promised a senior who wanted to switch his number that he was going to get 20, so that's not your number anymore, and this is a sheet with all the numbers. And I was looking up and down the list, and I saw 88, and I was like, instantly Cody Jameson. Like it was easy enough, and I was like, yep, that's what I'm going with. And it was history from there. I'll never wear another number. So
Awesome. Yeah, I went to play for Brampton, and I was number 17, and they said no, you can't have that because that's Brody Merrill's number. So um, that was a tough one. And then when I played for Toronto, Steph, who was an incoming rookie as well, wanted 17. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not probably just not getting that number again. Um, but last question for you. So again, obviously being eliminated stinks. But what are you hoping? What are your goals for these last two games? Do you have any like personal things that you're hoping to achieve, or any team goals that you want to see happen? And for you, again, if you want to play next year, obviously, who knows what's going to happen just with the franchise and new coaching and all that. But what are you hoping to kind of keep building upon and keep? How are you trying to improve your game over these last two games?
yeah, I think as a team, I would love to see us go 2-0. Like that's always the main goal. And every single game, it's one game at a time. You get a win and you worry about the next one. But at the end of the day, we are eliminated. And I would just like to see us as a team, go out and compete like we did against Buffalo. Like the Buffalo outcome wasn't the outcome that we wanted, but we played hard. And I can't say that we did a lot of stuff super wrong, and we competed the whole time. So I just want to see us, compete and do what we know we can do the last two games. And then on a personal level, I just want to continue, making those upward strides that I have this year, and continue to try to get that big man voice. I'm in my second year. I'm going to go into my third year. I'm not a rookie anymore. I've played in 15 plus 20 plus NLL games now. It's like I can talk, and I know what I'm doing out there. So I want to be another voice that people can come to and be able to trust me and everything like that. So I think for me personally, I just want to continue getting better as a teammate and getting better as a player on the floor. And if a couple goals roll in my way doing that, I would love that too. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting a win and, being there for your teammates and, having your teammates trust is the biggest thing. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. It's, it sucks that you guys are eliminated, but looking forward to a great, couple of great games and really enjoy watching you play. So good luck out there and safe travels.
I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, Drew. And thanks everybody for tuning in to Nighthawks Media Availability. Be sure to tune in at 4 p.m. on Saturday and 3 p.m. on Sunday as the Nighthawks and the Georgia Swarm face off first in Georgia, then in Rochester. We'll see you then.